It began like any other night in a quiet corner of the world, where life moved slowly and the people of the village trusted in the safety of their routines. Families gathered for dinner. The smell of warm bread filled the air, and children laughed as they played beneath lantern light. Nothing in those final hours suggested the darkness that was about to swallow everything. Yet by the next morning, the village no longer existed as it had the night before. Doors hung open. Meals remained untouched on tables. Clothes lay folded neatly at the foot of beds, and tools rested in fields as if dropped mid-task. Everything was there except for the people. An entire community had vanished overnight, leaving behind a silence so thick it unsettled even the bravest who stepped into its boundaries. The sudden disappearance was not just the loss of a few individuals. It was the erasure of an entire village, as if the earth itself had consumed its inhabitants. The sheer impossibility of the sight was enough to chill the bones of those who first arrived. Where were the farmers who had tended their land for generations? Where were the mothers and children, their laughter so familiar the evening before? Animals still roamed the streets aimlessly, hungry and confused, but not a single soul remained to care for them. The scene looked frozen in time, preserved in such a way that one could almost imagine the villagers had simply stepped out for a moment and never returned. Whispers began immediately. Some claimed that a great storm had carried the villagers away, though the skies had been calm. Others insisted it was the work of bandits or soldiers. Yet there were no signs of struggle, no broken doors, no blood to mark violence. Everything pointed not to chaos, but to a strange, deliberate stillness. Plates of food were half eaten, cups of water half full, and in one home, a candle still flickered, as though someone had left only seconds before. It felt less like abandonment and more like a sudden interruption, as if the lives of the people had been cut from reality in an instant. Those who dared to walk further into the empty homes described a feeling of being watched. The silence was not peaceful but oppressive, as though the absence of the villagers created a weight of its own. Some swore they heard faint whispers, not in their ears but in the back of their minds, pulling them to turn around and leave before they too disappeared. Others reported seeing fleeting shadows pass between doorways or movements in windows, though no one was there. The longer anyone stayed, the more the fear grew, as if the emptiness itself was alive and feeding on those who entered. What made this disappearance so haunting was the lack of answers. In other stories of vanished towns, there are clues, footprints, evidence of fire, signs of migration. But here, there was nothing. No trail, no warning, no farewell left behind. Just an eerie snapshot of life that had been abandoned in a single breath. It was as though the villagers had been erased, not just physically but spiritually, removed from existence in a way that defied explanation. This was not just a mystery of missing people. It was a mystery of how reality itself could unravel in the span of a single night. And so the legend of the Vanishing Village began, whispered by those who saw it with their own eyes and carried in hushed tones by those too frightened to ever visit. The sudden disappearance became more than a story. It became a wound on the land itself, a chilling reminder that some mysteries are not meant to be solved, only feared. The discovery of the abandoned village sent ripples of fear and fascination across neighboring towns. At first, people treated it as a tragedy, an unspeakable accident that robbed the community of its very existence. But soon, whispers transformed into rumors, and rumors hardened into legends. The absence of evidence did not silence the story, it amplified it. Travelers passing nearby spoke of an unshakable coldness that clung to the road, even on the warmest summer days. Hunters who ventured too close returned pale and trembling, claiming they had heard voices in the distance, calling their names in tones that matched their loved ones but came from the wrong direction. What should have been just another rural tragedy began to take the shape of something darker, a tale of the supernatural. The folklore grew quickly. Some said the village had made a pact with something far older than time itself, and when the bargain expired, the people were taken as payment. Others believed the land itself was cursed, tainted by ancient rituals that demanded lives to remain appeased. Elders spoke in hushed voices about the ancestors who were warned never to settle on that soil, for shadows moved beneath it. But as generations passed, warnings turned into myths, and myths into forgotten words, until one day a new community built their homes where they were never meant to. For believers, The vanishing was not a mystery at all. It was the inevitable return of what had been promised long ago. The more the story spread, the more the village transformed into something beyond reality. People who had never set foot near it claimed they dreamed of its narrow dirt roads and its silent houses. Some reported waking in the middle of the night with mud on their feet, convinced they had wandered to that empty place in their sleep. Travelers would avoid even the paths that led remotely close, saying the forest around it grew unnaturally thick, branches weaving together as if trying to shield outsiders from what lay within. Yet despite the warnings, curiosity drew others in. Ghost hunters, scholars of the strange, and thrill-seekers could not resist the pull of a place where an entire population had dissolved into thin air. Their accounts only fueled the fire. Those who returned alive described a suffocating heaviness in the air, as if the world itself did not want them there. They spoke of hearing children's laughter echoing through hollow streets, of seeing faint lanterns glowing in windows though no flame was lit, and of feeling an invisible hand brush against their skin in the dark. Some swore they saw the villagers still inside their homes, but only as silhouettes, frozen in silence, watching with eyes that seemed hollow and endless. Yet others who went seeking answers never returned at all, as if they too had been absorbed into the mystery. The legend grew into a living thing, feeding on fear. The missing were no longer seen as victims, but as part of the haunting, their presence woven into the fabric of the place. The village became a warning in bedtime tales, told to children to keep them from wandering too far at night. It became a whispered curse, invoked by those who wanted to frighten their enemies. It became an echo in the cultural memory of the region, a shadow that stretched beyond the land where the houses stood empty. Over time, even the skeptics admitted there was something unexplainable about the place. They could dismiss the ghost stories, the curses, the whispers of ancient pacts, but they could not dismiss the undeniable fact that an entire community had once lived and then simply ceased to exist. And as long as no answer could be found, the story remained alive, reshaping itself with each telling, always darker, always more chilling. For some, the village was a story of loss. For others, it was a story of punishment. But for everyone, it was a reminder that sometimes the unknown is not just waiting to be discovered. It is waiting to take us. As years passed, investigators and wanderers alike tried to uncover what really happened within the village, each of them drawn by the same gnawing need to understand the truth. At first, the searches were methodical. Records were studied, maps examined, and family lineages traced to find any explanation for where the villagers might have gone. Some believed they had migrated, fleeing silently in the night to escape famine, disease, or the weight of unpaid debts. Yet every document ended in silence. Every clue dissolved into nothing. No letters were written, no tracks left behind, no new settlement discovered that carried the names of those who vanished. It was as if they had been erased not only from their homes, but from history itself. When logic failed, science stepped in. Archaeologists dug into the soil, hoping to find graves or signs of mass burials. But the earth gave nothing back except cold stone and roots that seemed too tangled, as if disturbed countless times before. Geologists consider the possibility of a natural disaster, perhaps a sudden sinkhole or toxic gas release. Yet the land remained steady, its air clean, its water untainted. Superstitious or not, those who dug too deeply often reported strange sensations, an overwhelming dizziness, a sudden sense of being watched, or the sound of whispers rising to the soil itself. More than once, the excavations ended not from lack of results, but from fear overtaking reason. Those who studied the psychological side of the story argued that the entire tale was nothing more than a product of human imagination, inflated by time and fear. They suggested that perhaps the villagers had died quietly of illness, their remains consumed by the forest, while rumors of their vanishing grew in the telling. Yet even they could not explain why no human remains were ever found, why the belongings of the villagers remained untouched, or why every attempt to stay overnight in the place ended with strange phenomena, flickering lights, unexplainable voices, and an oppressive weight that made sleep impossible. Rational answers cracked under the weight of irrational evidence. Journalists and storytellers began to arrive, hoping to capture the truth in ink and paper. Many left with chilling accounts that blurred the line between fact and legend. One reporter described walking into the village at dusk and hearing the faint sound of footsteps matching his own, as though someone or something was shadowing him just beyond sight. Another claimed that as he sat inside one of the homes, the chairs around a table scraped across the floor, as if unseen guests were taking their seats. A historian who spent a week studying the ruins returned broken, muttering endlessly about voices that begged him to join them. He never spoke again of what he saw, and his writings were destroyed. The deeper people searched, the more the mystery pushed back. Those who tried to map the area found their compasses spinning wildly. Photographs taken within the village often developed with strange distortions. Faces appearing in windows, long streaks of shadow curling around empty homes. Some visitors even brought modern recording devices, only to capture whispers in languages they could not recognize, voices rising in unison like a chant. Whatever was in the village did not want to be uncovered, and it seemed to punish those who tried. Eventually, investigators stopped seeking explanations. Fear outweighed curiosity, and the place was left to rot in silence. The world outside moved on, but the mystery endured, lingering like smoke that refuses to disperse. It remained a wound that no logic could heal, a reminder that some truths are buried too deep for humans to uncover. The vanishing of the village was no longer just a puzzle. It became a living reminder that reality itself can fracture, leaving behind. The story of the vanishing village did not end with the silence of its ruins. In fact, for many, that was only the beginning. Those who ventured near often carried something back with them. Not a physical object, but a lingering presence, a shadow that followed them long after they had left the borders of the empty streets. People reported nightmares so vivid they woke drenched in sweat. Dreams of walking endlessly through the abandoned homes, hearing voices call their names from behind locked doors. Some spoke of seeing faces press against their windows at night, familiar yet distorted, as though the villagers themselves had reached across time and space to remind the living that they were never truly gone. It was not only individuals who felt the curse. Families claimed that after visiting the ruins, strange events began to plague their homes. Objects moved on their own. Whispers filled dark corners, and children spoke of new imaginary friends who matched the descriptions of missing villagers. Even those who had only heard the story in detail sometimes claimed to feel its weight, as if the legend itself carried a power strong enough to haunt from afar. The village was no longer just a place. It had become an infection of the mind, spreading its influence through stories and memories. Researchers studying the phenomenon began to notice patterns. Survivors of overnight stays often spoke of hearing music, faint and distant, the kind played at village festivals long ago. Others described time behaving strangely within the village, clocks stopping without reason, watches spinning backward, and a sense that hours passed in what felt like only minutes. Some claimed that when they left, they discovered they had been inside for days rather than hours, though they had no memory of that missing time. Whatever force had consumed the villagers seemed to bend reality for those who dared to enter. One of the most chilling accounts came from a group of travelers who set out to disprove the legend by camping in the center of the village. They recorded their voices and laughter to prove nothing would happen. Yet when they returned to listen to their tapes, their laughter was gone. In its place were dozens of voices whispering in unison, repeating the words, "We are still here." None of them ever returned to the site, and some claimed to have lost years of their lives to illness and paranoia. As the story spread, the village's reputation transformed it into something more than a mystery. It became a forbidden place, a symbol of the thin line between the known and the unknowable. Even the bravest explorers, drawn by curiosity or the desire for fame, approached it with hesitation, and those who stayed too long often came back changed, with hollow eyes and voices that trembled when they spoke of what they had seen. It was as if the village fed on them, taking pieces of their spirit in exchange for letting them go. In the end, the vanishing of the villagers became more than a single unexplained event. It became a living myth, one that blurred the boundary between reality and legend, between history and nightmare. The ruin stood as a monument to what happens when humanity collides with forces beyond its comprehension. The silence of the empty homes, the untouched meals, the laughter still echoing in dreams. These things reminded the world that sometimes the scariest mysteries are not the ones that leave blood or fire behind, but the ones that leave only emptiness. The villagers were gone, but their absence spoke louder than any presence ever could. And so, the story endured, not as a puzzle waiting to be solved, but as a warning of what happens when the shadows of the unknown decide to take what they are owed. The legacy of the Vanishing Village has endured far beyond its borders, weaving itself into the fabric of time as one of the greatest unsolved horrors of human history. For those who hear the story, it is impossible not to wonder what could erase an entire community so cleanly, so silently, without leaving behind even a single trace of struggle. It has become more than a tale of disappearance. It has grown into a symbol of the unknown, of the fragile line between the ordinary world we understand and the darker realms that lie just beyond our comprehension. The village itself may stand in ruins, but its story continues to breathe, passed on in whispers, in folklore, and in the shiver that runs down a listener's spine when the name is spoken. Generations later, the legend has taken many forms. Some treat it as a cautionary tale, a reminder of what happens when humans settle where they should not, disturbing lands bound by ancient rules. Others see it as a test of faith, believing the villagers were taken as punishment for hidden sins, their fate serving as an eternal warning to those who live in arrogance. For the curious and the brave, it remains an irresistible enigma, a puzzle without an answer that promises glory to anyone who dares to solve it. Yet with every attempt to pierce the mystery, the darkness seems to push back harder, leaving only fear and silence. Modern times have only deepened its grip on imagination. With the rise of technology, paranormal investigators have returned with cameras, recorders, and machines designed to capture what the eye cannot see. What they brought back only added fuel to fire. Distorted figures appeared on film. Voices bled through recordings even when no one was speaking, and lights shimmered in windows where no electricity remained. Scientists, skeptics, and believers all looked at the evidence, yet none could offer a solid explanation. The deeper the search, the stronger the realization became. Perhaps this was not a mystery meant to be solved, but a reminder that some truths are meant to remain in shadow. The villagers' absence has become their presence. They linger in stories, in nightmares, in the imaginations of all who dare to think about them. Teachers warn children of the dangers of wandering too far at night by telling them of the people who simply disappeared. Elders repeat the tale to remind communities that not all land is safe to claim. And storytellers use the Vanishing Village as proof that horror does not always need monsters or blood to terrify. It needs only silence, emptiness, and questions that can never be answered. The legend is more powerful than the truth could ever be. What chills the soul most deeply is not the horror of what happened, but the realization that it could happen again. If an entire village could vanish without explanation once, what stops it from happening to another? What if, even now, somewhere in the world, a community goes to sleep and never wakes again, leaving only cold homes and unanswered questions behind? The thought lingers like a shadow, a reminder that the unknown is never far away. The Vanishing Village endures not as a chapter of history, but as a wound on the human spirit, a scar that whispers of the things we will never understand. Its silence screams across time, warning us that the world is full of mysteries we may never solve, and that sometimes the scariest stories are the ones that do not end. The villagers are gone, but their legacy is eternal, echoing in every telling, every whisper, every nightmare. They may never return, but the fear they left behind ensures they will never be forgotten.